Welcome back to the final hour on this Friday, 365 Sports with Paul Catalina and Craig Smoke. I'm David Smoke, and we continue to try to look back at West Virginia's win against Baylor, also ahead of the weekend with so much more to come. But right now, Sam Bradshaw, S11 on the site, also on Twitter, who analyzes and breaks down trends, matchups, whatever, before a game and also after a game and the day after a game. Sam joins us. And Sam, your opening comment in your post today, absolutely sickening loss. They had a huge game on offense, they were awful on defense, and they lost special teams and turnovers.
That's the long and short of it. You know, you have a game where you average over half the field per drive, and you outgain them significantly. You handle a lot of big moments with Chapin. They had no answer. The running game was on track, and you find a way to lose. I think the biggest inflection point that night was the unforced fumble that Chapin had when Baylor was just outside West Virginia's red zone. They were up 7, about to go up 2 scores before the half, most likely. And then West Virginia's tied. And then they had another unforced error on the point after. Mental error on the blocking there. West Virginia blocks it and runs it back. Kudos to them for doing it on both those plays. But if you handle your business, those plays don't happen. And that was, at minimum, a 10-point swing directly. But when you consider that Chapin was likely going in to score on that drive, it was a bigger swing than that, and ultimately it got him beat.
Sam, are there schematic issues on defense, talent issues? What would you call the biggest problem right now?
For whichever reason you assign to it, they do not trust that secondary the way they trusted them last year. They are doing everything in their power to stop the run with fewer guys in the box than you would typically see. So if the offense has 5 blockers, they want 5 guys in the box, which for a lot of offensive coaches, we're going to run on that all day. So far this season, the only team that's been able to make them pay for doing that was West Virginia. And West Virginia's got a couple really good run blockers up front. But even then, if they fit counter a little better and if they tackle a little better, the running results from last night are dramatically different. And then beyond that, on the back end, they're conceding way too many short completions. And this is something we discussed on the bye week interview you guys had me on. Way too many short completions, setting up way too many easier third downs makes it difficult to get off the field. And I don't know if it's because they don't feel like they have the guys, period, or if they don't feel like they have guys that are mentally and technique-wise ready yet. And I go back and forth on that, or if they're just so overrating their defensive front's ability to get pressure, and that's informing their strategy. You know, is that something where it's a numbers game and they're taking the analytics a little too far, or if that's something where they just don't have confidence in the back end, and which reason is the reason for that? I honestly go back and forth between those things. But the maddening thing is you've got plenty of speed on the back end, and you've got plenty of athletes in the front 7. This defense should be playing a lot better than it is.
And Sam, that D-line, they still just cannot apply any pressure. I mean, JT Daniels got hit one time last night, and he immediately looked scared to death. And then, 2 plays later, he was back to normal because he realized, I'm probably not going to get hit anymore. I mean, I know that Terrell Bernard and Jalen Petrie were big parts of, being able to get into the backfield, but was that the key to success, was just those guys' talents overall? Because since they've left, I mean, there's been some sacks here and there, but for the most part, quarterbacks are just sitting back there and taking their sweet time.
I feel like it's a lot more on the coverage and what different tactics you're willing to do based off your back end guys.
Okay.
Because you not only lost Kalen Barnes, you also lost Jaron McVay, you lost JT Woods,
right.
You lost Jalen Petrie. That's a significant chunk of your back 5. And your other starting corner, Al Walcott, is now replacing Petrie. And he's not the blitzer Petrie was, but he's probably a little better cover guy. And then you also lost Tejada. That's a lot of experience, depth, and talent on the back end And I don't think they have the same confidence in the replacement guys. And let's be honest here. One of the things I was stressing throughout the week, everybody's like, West Virginia's 0-2 in conference. West Virginia's 0-2 in conference. They're 2-3 overall. West Virginia was the flukiest pick six I've ever seen in that Pitt game, and an overtime period away from being against Kansas from being 4-1 coming into that game. Yes, their defense is awful. Their defense was absolutely awful. But West Virginia's offense, they averaged 44 yards per drive in the 4 Power 5 conference games that they had coming into the game. 30 or 33, that range, that's average. They were blowing that away. The opposing defenses they played gave up 30 yards per drive to their other Power 5 teams. So let's not pretend that West Virginia's offense is somehow the scout team or not in like the top 3 offenses in the Big 12 or top 3 offenses Baylor's going to see this year. That was a legit offense, and they did what they did for the vast majority of the year. They had a couple of drives where their drops killed them early against Texas, but from the end of the first half through the end of the game in Austin, West Virginia was stopped one time, and Texas is not a bad defense. So that is a very good offense, and it's a bad night for you to play poorly. It's a bad night for you to give them 10 to 17 point swings. It's a very frustrating game. It doesn't change my opinion of this team because, this team is a young team and they've got the talent to play with anyone in the conference. But they've also got enough youth and inexperience that they'll make some mistakes that will allow the vast majority of the conference, especially this year, to put the hurt on them if they give them the chance. You've got 3 games. You go out to Provo and you spend a half with your offense sputtering. You have maximum protections where nobody blocks the nose guard. You have the quarterback open the wrong way on a rollout and everybody else goes the opposite way. And you have just a litany of errors on that. Then you have special teams errors when you have a kid that can kick it out of the end zone. Basically spot Oklahoma State 7 points directly and set 7 other ones up. And you have key drops, kill a couple drives, and give them a turnover. And then you have the errors you had in Morgantown. This team just has to put it all together because they've got the talent. Gavin Holmes lost in all this. That kid stepped up after basically being the GOAT of the Oklahoma State loss and getting all that blame. He stepped up and had a banner night. And it's frustrating, and it's especially frustrating in the sense that the hit on Chapin did not look clean, and I do think they still pull that game out if he plays the whole way.
Yeah, a lot of backup quarterbacks. We saw Kansas lose Jalen Daniels, and Bean came in and played well. Thrones played well for Baylor when he had to come in. We saw Hudson Card with Texas with what he's done. Texas Tech has been through 3 of them. It's part of this conference. It's an attrition. It's a grind. Now, is it better if West Virginia just, when they got a first down, told the officials they wanted to be on 3rd and 8?
I don't know about that. Some of those plays were really just outstanding catches by West Virginia, similar to some of the ones that Kyron Drones was able to hit down the stretch. And how did that kid step up? He didn't run the 2-minute drill well, but you don't expect a freshman getting his first real time to do that all that effectively. But, some of them, they were just making perfect throws and catches. But others, I remember there was one conversion, I think it was to either Reese Smith or his backup over the middle. They had Tampa 2 covers, and the linebacker was a little late getting over, and the safety was a little late getting over. And it allowed him to make a big conversion when you had him 3rd and long. They've still got too many of those plays where they're just a little out of position. And they're going to have to get it buttoned up. Obviously, you don't know if Jalen Daniels is going to be healthy for Kansas next week, but they've still got a good kid in Jason Bean. You saw him last year. He's improved if his performance against TCU is any indication. And Kansas is another one of these really good offenses that has put a hurt on basically everybody they've played except for Iowa State, and they still won that game. So, there's no off weeks in the Big 12, and you're going to have to bring your A game. And this team can go on a run if they put it together, but you've got to stop giving teams help. You've got to stop spotting them points.
Lorando Johnson in that end zone where he made the break up in the end zone. That's the kind of play you almost picked it off, and almost, again, balls tipped in the air, almost somebody there, and they're losing that turnover battle. Sam, thanks for your time. It was a tough loss, and you know what? They're 3-3. Do you see 3 wins? You said they can win any game they play the rest of the way, and I get that. And sometimes there's overreactions right after a game. Did you ever think we would get to this point in the season and we started wondering if they're a bowl team?
I don't think we would get to the point that we thought they would be a bowl team. But if you asked me going into the season if every week was going to be a toss-up game that is going to be down to the fourth quarter, I would have said that's pretty fair, considering what they lost and considering just how deep the league is. You know, do I think they get to a bowl? Yeah. I think you're looking at 6 or 7 wins as a floor. But at the same time, they've got to clean it up. They improved dramatically over the course of the last season, and I expect them to do the same this year. But whether or not they've got the guys on the back end, they've got to mix it up in terms of calls. They've got to do something to take away those sure completions, because even if you don't have perfect candidates, you know, Phil Bennett down the stretch in 2011, that defense was far from what any of us would call really strong. But down the stretch, they got aggressive, and they were able to be disruptive enough for that offense to carry them to some victories.
Sam, thank you, man. Have a great weekend. Appreciate your time. Working overtime always with us. Sam Bradshaw, S11 on the site, breaks things down after the game. He'll do that on the weekend. Also has his 11 bullet points right after the game. All sorts of different reactions to the game. Craig will have his quick, instant reactions. Brian Etheridge has his, among others. And, of course, so do the fans on the message boards. Here's an interesting note. Eddie Lackey last night, they put up a graphic in that game about that 70-63 game back in, 2012. And he was like, no, I don't want to remember that game. It was kind of funny. I love Eddie Lackey. And Dylan Doyle had a pick. I text both you guys. When was the last time he made a game-changing play? And he had the interception. They didn't take advantage of it. And I even said after the interception when Drones threw it up for grabs, which he didn't need to do, but made the decision, that might have been the dagger. And then Doyle gets the pick. And then there's 2 or 3 fans that come up to me, and then all of a sudden there's Dylan Doyle. That doesn't take away from the points you could have had when you threw the pick. Because Dylan Doyle may have had that interception after you had kicked the field goal to maybe tie the game up. So there's a little bit of that too. Blake Shapen last year. This year has 11 touchdown passes. His entire career prior, 16 overall, including that. Gavin Holmes, the first Baylor player to have 200-plus yards receiving in a game since K.D. Cannon with that spectacular, and his last game at Baylor in the Cactus Bowl when they won the bowl game to finish 7-6 in 2016. Damian Smith on Twitter, the tackling has been really bad this year. I was thinking how much experience the defense lost. Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie, J.T. Woods, they're young in the defensive back area. I still believe in this staff, though. Baylor fans need to chill. Caitlin Bickle, Baylor women's basketball player. I don't think a lot of people understand how important maturity and upperclassmen are, and it shows. We lost many valuable pieces last year that were Baylor for 5 or 6 years. It's kind of, when you put those numbers up there, she's right. This team is young. A lot of people are playing defense, different roles. It's going to take some time, and I know people don't want for anything to take time. When we come back, earlier this week, the Hall of Famer across the board, the great Earl Campbell, the Tyler Rose, sat down with us on college football and life. And that's next on 365 Sports.